Well, with me now to talk more about how Boeing might find its way forward is Mark Weiss. He's president of Weiss Consulting Group and a former pilot for American Airlines. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So let's take a look. Where does Boeing stand in terms of its efforts to get its 737 MAXs back in the air again?
Well, they've taken extraordinary efforts to try and placate all the regulatory agencies globally because they've recognized that and have admitted that their MCAS system seemed to be the culprit in both of these accidents. So they've taken these measures to work to prevent this from happening again, to give pilots more training, and the biggest thing, aside from the safety aspect, would be now to get their reputation back, which has really been tarnished.
And certainly we've seen that in terms of earnings taking a hit. I mean, Boeing estimates that it's going to have about $1 billion in losses by the end of all this. And it's an ongoing issue, though, still. A lot of moving parts. You have potential lawsuits. You have some airlines choosing to go with other carriers. What's your take on their estimate with this $1 billion?
Well, it's going to be very hard to say because you're really going to have to wait until the final determination comes out in the NTSB report and the reports from the agencies. Because remember, accidents don't happen generally from a single cause. So there's been a chain of events. So how much this is going to affect Boeing is also going to depend upon how much fault they lay with the training, with the airlines, with the pilots, whether there was integration, poor integration of the systems, whether it was poor design and Boeing not saying anything to anybody. So the numbers are at this point still just estimates of what may transpire. And certainly the legal lawsuits from the families that were involved in the accidents are going to up that enormously.
So what are industry insiders making of how Boeing has handled this since they've now grounded the planes?
Well, it wasn't handled in the best way. I mean, I think that's suffice to say. But what they've done is now they've gotten, a few weeks ago, they've gotten pilots and regulators from various airlines, from industry leaders around the world, and regulatory agencies. In fact, from China, the CAAC has been there, EASA from Europe has been there, because the FAA's reputation has certainly been tarnished along with Boeing's. So what they're doing is they're trying to get this fixed, and they can't rush it. They don't want to rush it. First of all, the optics of that would be horrendous.
Right.
But of course, they don't want to rush it because they want to make sure that what is going to be in place has met the criteria for all pilot groups, for the safety standards around the globe. So they're really working hard to bring back their reputation. And remember, Boeing gets about a third of its funding from its airliners that they produce.
Right.
And when you think about how much money that's going to be worth over the next number of years, it's estimated that there's going to be just about 45 or 50,000 airplanes that are necessary in the next 20 years. They've got to get this reputation back.
Now, while they are handling their reputation, we've seen that Ethiopian Airlines chief executive said they were actually in talks with Chinese company COMAC and their engineers to use the C919 models potentially instead. What are your thoughts on now how this might affect the supply chain?
Well, the C919 is an unproven aircraft at this point. It's gone through some test flights. It's been a few years delayed in its opening, so to speak. It's going to take years to develop it. And when you think about that, the need for the aircraft is not just 2 years down the road. It's tomorrow and the month after. In the recent holidays they've had over in Asia, particularly in China, there were 4,000 more flights put on in a short period of time just to accommodate the burgeoning population. As wealth is spread out more evenly and distributed amongst the population, right, more and more people are going to fly. You need the aircraft that are there now to be able to fly.
And just quickly, we know that a lot of other commercial airlines have their earnings coming out later this week. A lot of these airlines use the 737 MAX. How do you see this potentially, the fallout affecting them? Well,
it's a cascading effect. It's going to obviously impact on earnings. But one of the things that airlines have done, and wisely, is delayed getting the aircraft back into service until a time further down the road, August, July, after the summer travel season, And they did that so that they don't have to cancel flights, that they can rebook flights, they can reposition aircraft to be in position to carry more passengers. So they've minimized that, but it's obviously going to take an effect on everybody's bottom line.
And as you said, something you really can't afford to get wrong a second time.
Not at all.
Thank you so much, Mark Weiss, there, president of Weiss Consulting Group and a former pilot for American Airlines. Thank you so much.
Thank you.